Good afternoon, Dialogues, your monthly update from the integrated photonics community. My name is Johan Smeets and I'll be your host today. Today is the last episode of the 2022 editions and I'm very glad to have you watching with us live today. The last time we had an interesting episode actually about heterogeneous integration, a very important topic for our industry. We discussed the importance, the various platforms and what they can bring to the table, and also we learned from IMEC about the various methods and technologies, how we can integrate those platforms together to unlock functionalities and features for relevant applications. Today, however, we are going to look back at PIC Summit Europe. This was the event we were co-hosting earlier in November. And we have a couple of speakers with us today to look back at the event and reflect on what was discussed and the impressions that were given and how we can use that for the future of our industry. We are going to start the program today with an interview with my colleague Ewit Roos. After, we will follow with an interview with Ivan Nikitski from PIC. After that, we'll have 3 of the panel discussion chairs to present their key findings of the sessions they were leading. That will be Sylwester Latowski from the PITC and TUE, telling us about what they were discussing at the standardization needs for an emerging industry. Second will be Michael Lebby from Lightwave Logic, talking about his session that was about heterogeneous integration again. Last but not least, we'll have John Bell from High-Tech Excel, talking about tech transfer and investments. So to start off, I am welcoming into the call Ewit Roos, CEO of PhotonDelta. Ewit, so wasn't it great to see the entire community come together during the PIC Summit in November?
It was great indeed, but it was the entire community, but it was also a new community. So that's my first remark. I'll be back on that. The second thing is, what I pretty much enjoyed is that this was not a PhotonDelta party. It was a gathering of many different people with different backgrounds that came together on the EU PIC Summit. So yeah, it was a community, but it was not a so-called incestuous community. There were new people, new industries, new insights. We had academia, but we had also people from industry, from semicon. We had end users, we had politicians, we had people from Brussels, we had venture capital. And we had startups. And I had several conversations, I don't know how your experience was, that gave me a mirror about where we were and what we should do and what is important for Europe, but maybe also from a global perspective on photonic integration. So it was the variety and the new, let's say the new kind of audiences that were in this summit. And aside from that, it's great to have organizations like EPIC, Tech Tour, with their venture capital activity and their startups, and of course having the IPSRI in the Netherlands, where many end users of these technologies contributed to the discussions on the different roadmaps. And on the semicon side, it was one of the goals of this PIC Summit. When we talk about integration and later in this Delta dialogue, you will talk with a couple of other people about integration. I think Michael Lebby, by the way, is going to talk about that.
Yep, indeed.
Integration in CMOS with the semicon is a key thing. So I was very happy that we welcomed people from Nexperia, NVIDIA, XFAB, also to discuss these topics.
Yes. So I hear you say the diversity of the audience that was there played a big role in making this event a success. And I think that was also something that we could notice during, let's say, the networking moments, right? People were very much engaged with each other going into discussions. It was sometimes difficult actually to take these people back into the plenary audience rooms. So you were mentioning also that there's various, let's say, smaller initiatives that were falling under the PIC Summit umbrella. You mentioned Tech Tour, where we were gathering investors and bringing them together with the technology and the startups that are promising for them to invest in. But you also mentioned the IPSR International, the road mapping activities. Maybe can you tell us a bit more on how that also helped to bring more end users to the table?
Oh, it was an explicit part of the IBSRI, because that should not just be an academic exercise. It's basically end users and integrators who tell the academic community where to devote their attention to in terms of roadmaps. And therefore we got quite some end users in. But I forgot some another aspect of this conference. It's also the size. We had 300 people every day, and that made actually relatively easy a lot of networking accessible and available for everyone. If a conference is too big, if you have 1,000 people or something like that, it cannot be that interactive and communicative as it was. So I like to emphasize that. So yes. Size matters, and it shouldn't be too big.
Yes. No, I definitely agree with you on that. And I think also coming back to the diversity, it helped that we had over 20 different nationalities taking part in this summit, and from all these various angles that they come from, I think was something that was very useful. Maybe another topic that we can shine some light on is the involvement also of the policymakers. We had keynotes from the European Commission, but also from the national government. Is this something that you see as a trend that is promising, let's say, for the further development of our industry?
Well, I've said it many times. If we in Europe want to have a position in the global arena for this in this industry, then it's much more important within Europe to look at the complementarities from a supply chain point of view, from, let's say, an expertise in particular application domains point of view, and it's my sincere hope, and I know that in Brussels there are definitely thoughts about that we need to unite and again look for the complementarities in this industry within Europe. And there are many domains and clusters in Europe that can contribute to the bigger European picture, instead of competing within Europe in countries or clusters and saying that they're the biggest and the greatest and the best and that they're going to conquer the world. It's about a united industry as far as possible in Europe. And from that perspective, I think it was very important to have a commissioner into the audience and give a great presentation. And we got the message across that this is a European effort. It's not a PhotonDelta thing. We talk about a European supply chain. It's about a European contribution to the assets that we have, both on the application side and the supply chain, for the photonic integration industry, and the links, of course, the critical links with the semicon. So it's a long answer, but the policy part is critical, because hopefully we're going to see some funds floating from the EU Chips Act fund into the integrated photonics community, into the integrated photonics industry. And to get there, and to get it flowed in that direction, we need to cooperate in Europe and not claiming a national position that can do it all. It's about cooperation.
I hear you, Ewit. Uniting forces together with other member states in Europe, but also with the other stakeholders that are relevant, like semicon,
Exactly.
like end users, in order to get this industry forward and make sure that we can really produce these products, these innovative products that we need in the near future. Last question before we move on to our next speaker, Ewit, is how do you see this event going forward?
I'm thinking about that, but I'm not a specialist. But I think that this could be a European event because it's not a PhotonDelta event. It's organized by PhotonDelta, which is fine. But the European emphasis, the emphasis on cooperation, academia, government, policymakers, venture capital, etc. That is the whole aim of this. And it doesn't matter where you do this. I would say the next event. First of all, we're going to continue with this because I heard many people asking, can we do this together? Are you going to do this again next year? And my answer was yes. And the second thing is, I think we should do it. We should consider to do this somewhere in Europe. Maybe Valencia. Who knows?
Okay, thank you for your thoughts, Ewit. Very interesting. And well, now it's time for us to welcome our next guest for today, and that is no one less than Ivan Nikitski from the European Photonics Industry Consortium, EPIC. Ivan, can you unmute yourself and put your camera on so we can see you and welcome you into the show? There you are.
Yes, I'm here. Hello,
okay. Yes, great. Thank you, Ivan, for coming here today. And I think some of the things that Ewit says were, of course, spot on when it comes to bringing all these stakeholders together. But I'm curious from your angle, because Ewit was saying we need to do this as a Europe together, and you, as an industry consortium that really comprises the entire value chain over Europe, how do you look at the event that took place earlier in November?
Right. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting. And looking back at the PIC Summit, in fact, I can agree with many points that Ewit indicated. So first of all, it was a very well-organized event, thanks to the efforts of PhotonDelta. The lineup of speakers was very impressive. The size of the event, as Ewit says, was just fine. And the venue was perfect. Even the Dutch weather was good that week. And going into the content, I think it was a very good fusion of a technology event and an advocacy event. So among the speakers, there were both the industry leaders and the representatives of the EU Commission, Dutch government, and the photonic industry associations. So this gave the audience a kind of unique chance to stay tuned with both the technical novelties in the field and also follow the political strategy regarding photonics, which is, of course, very important, especially now in the view of the European Chips Act. And in fact, Colette Maloney, the representative of the EU Commission, directly said this in her presentation, that photonics is in the Chips Act, and which means us as an industry, we need to act accordingly.
Good.
So these are my thoughts.
Yeah, I see your point. I think there was also some kind of sense for urgency in the presentations from the European Commission and also from Gabriel Krian when he was saying, we need to act now in order to make sure that we can expand this industrial footprint that we need in order to manufacture these kind of products here. So thanks for your thoughts on let's say the event as a whole. I think from a content point of view, you also attended a couple of panel discussions or let's say workshops, right? What was your opinion on those, or which ones did you attend actually?
Right. So yeah, I remember. So there was a vast choice of technology topics, and so dedicated seminars dedicated to RF photonics and interconnects and optical signal processing, spectral sensing, and then there was also quantum technologies and also application of photonic integration in the agri-photonics, agriculture. So I attended in fact, the last two. So, and I remember from the session on the quantum photonics, it was very interesting because the session was mostly about, well, evaluating the hype around the quantum photonics, because the topic is obviously booming right now, and there is a lot of noise around it. But us as an industry, again, we need to evaluate where we are in fact right now and bring this hype down to earth a little bit. And with that, actually, it was very interesting to see that there were several polls organized during this session. The polls for the audience and the audience consisted of those industry representatives. So they were asked, for example, when do you think the quantum communication, that is the first application that comes to mind and is hitting us soon. So when is the quantum communication going to be widely used, for example, to protect critical infrastructure? And so the results of the poll showed that the industry leaders think it's in 5-10 years, which is quite soon actually. But then the other question was, when do you think the quantum communication will be actually widely used in the consumer market? And the answer was 10 to 20 years. So, and most of the hype actually comes from this, because everybody expects already to send the quantum encrypted messages, but this is not coming before 10 years from now. And so the other questions, there was also about the quantum computing. When do you think the quantum computing will outperform a classical PC in a real life problem? And the result of the poll was that it's already in 5-10 to 10 years. That's again very soon. And last but not least, the audience was asked if they think the quantum photonics is appropriately funded to reach all of those goals. And the answer was clear no, basically. Regardless of all the public funds that is already available, so for there is a lack of private funding, and thus industry might not reach those the goals that were indicated in those polls, basically. So the second session I found very interesting was the agri-photonics. It was dedicated to basically photonic integration in precision agriculture. And so in that session, I remember we identified the trends in precision agriculture, which is basically moving the measurements in the precision agriculture towards closer to the plant, and also making the whole process more autonomous, and also measuring actually not the appearance of the plants, but more moving the measurements towards the inside, so the content of the plant or the fruit. And last but not least, further miniaturization of the sensing devices that are used in these applications. So which brings us, of course, to the integrated photonics, because that's the miniaturized devices as they are. And so the dilemma identified in that session is that the price point for such technologies, for photonic integration, is not the price point that is adequate for farmers, for agricultural workers. They're simply not used to buy systems that cost as much as photonic integrated products cost right now. And then so then here comes the dilemma, because to bring that price down, you need to ramp up the volume. To ramp up the volume, you need the increased demand from, again, those agricultural workers. So that's the dilemma, and then individual players basically cannot resolve it by themselves. So that's where we need the push from from the industry as a whole to sort out that dilemma and make the precision agriculture happen actually, which is very important now, right, in the view of the risk of the global hunger that we are apparently facing.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's indeed a very important topic that we should address, and we can address with this technology potentially, if, as you mentioned, we can lower the price, but for those price to drop for the specific application, and we need more volumes. Do you think maybe that help, let's say, if the volume increases in other applications, in other sensing applications, would that help to reduce the price for agri-food application?
Well, yes, indeed, of course. So just the incorporation of the photonic integration, so the indium phosphide and the silicon nitride technologies, the platforms itself will already bring the volume down.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. And so, looking at it from your angle, you have the overview of everything that happens in Europe and with your members, of course. When we think about making this a yearly event, do you think there would be any need from your members to do so?
Yes, indeed. I agree with Ewit, who said that this event, I believe, has a potential to become a European event. So it indeed can become a yearly gathering of the PIC community of Europe, not necessarily always in Netherlands, but can also move around Europe. But the fact is that so there is a niche for this, because obviously there are several large events for PIC integration in the US. And then on this side of the Earth, there's basically only PIC International, which is an event again organized by UK. And in continental Europe, there is no such event right now. So indeed, you're in the right niche.
All right. Good to hear we're on the right track, and of course very happy to have EPIC on board also in this initiative and to work together closely with your organization and with your members. Thank you, Ivan, for your inputs, and let's move to the next session. So now we get to the moment that 3 of the chairs of the panel discussions will present their findings in the chairs in the panels that they were chairing. We will have 3 of the panel discussions that we targeted to discuss today. The first one, standardization needs for an emerging industry. The second is about heterogeneous integration, and the third one is about technology transfer and investments. So our first guest speaker in this part of the program is no one less than Sylwester Latowski. Sylwester, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Great to have you on board, and of course, you look fabulous. Nice mustache.
Thank you.
There you go. We can see your slides, so the floor is all yours. And again, if anyone has questions in the audience, feel free to drop them in the chat box so I can ask them after the presentation to Sylwester himself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jorn, for this kind introduction. Thank you for bringing me here into this Delta Dialogue series. We are here today to look back at the PIC Summit. So before I dive into some conclusions or observations from my very panel, just to tap a little bit on what Ewit was saying. It was, of course, a great event organized here in Eindhoven, in my hometown now, by PhotonDelta, but to my mind, it was a truly international or even global event. I think the amount of colleagues who traveled here, even across the seas, was countless. So it is European, definitely. It is global, definitely. Now, looking at my panel, so standardization needs for integrated photonics. Jorn said it was titled Standardization Needs for Emerging Industries, but yeah, it's about integrated photonics in the end. Before I go to what has been discussed, I have to first express how grateful I am to other panelists, because panel discussion is as good as the contributors to this discussion. So I've been given a privilege to chair the session, but I was greatly supported by Barbara, Viene, Joost, and Jeroen de Jong, representing all different corners of industry or standardization efforts. So Barbara from NIST, Vienna from the Royal Netherlands Standardization Institute, Joost, to whom the integrated photonics is no strange domain from FIX, and Jeroen de Jong, who came and joined us from Siemens, but from the perspective of design, from the semiconductor electronics perspective. Yeah. So when we look for the standardization for integrated photonics, yeah, what we see in the middle of this slide is quite elegant photonic integrated circuits with particular functionality. The functionalities of these PICs today could be many, and they can address the challenges or solve the challenges in many applications in many domains of our lives to make them easier. And of course, they're surrounded with a cloud of technology roadmaps, so IPSRI or heterogeneous integration roadmap, different standardization efforts which are clustered more around particular applications. So in this selection, I picked maybe a few too many around the quantum technologies and applications. So QEDC, quantum technologies, quantum flagship. And there are, of course, standardization bodies, IEEE SA, ITU, IEC, which look more on the side of the technology aspects. But at the same time, we need means to make particular technology solutions being approved for markets, being connectable to the outside world in a safe manner. And behind those come the likes FDA, NIST, ISO, NEN or DIN, and many others that I didn't have a space on this slide. Yeah, so I drafted this cloud after my first meeting with other panelists. I understood from how diverse corners of standardization we're looking at the integrated photonics at this very moment. So we decided to run the panel following 3 themes. Yeah, so standardization for integrated photonics. And some questions, yeah, the main ones, is the standardization actually an enabler or a blocker? Is the time now? Yeah. So first main takeout from this was that the good standards do accelerate the adoption and they do support further innovation. Yeah. Because this is typically an argument from some that it may actually be blocking such. The conclusion from the session was, no, well-defined standards actually support and accelerate the adoption and further innovation. To answer the question, if the time is now, it's not so simple. It depends on the application. It depends on the technology. It also depends what is to be standardized. That brings me to the next theme, which is qualification standards. What is meant by that? And that's truly when Barbara and Vienna explained me their view, then I understood it's not only about particular technology solution, no matter how high level of abstraction we try to standardize, but it means norms, qualifications, technology standards, application notes. Yeah, how do we help to interface the technology to a particular application or to particular environment? And again, the questions here, which domains would benefit the most and which domains are ready? Yeah? The low-hanging fruit is the telecom and datacom. There are standards existing already defined by many bodies, so it's relatively easy to know what is expected, what form factors it should take within the next couple of years. But there are other domains like the quantum applications or automotive, for which the clear solution, technical solution, is not yet identified, and it's a little bit more difficult to standardize at a very, very low and specific level, while domains like automotive have already a range of qualification expectations where the products have to fulfill certain lifetimes and safety conditions, right? So this will have influence on what technology solutions go inside such a product, yeah, including integrated photonics. From that, I will move on to the awareness of integrated photonics. Yeah, standardization and qualification initiatives, in larger or smaller extent, they already formed working groups. They have active projects. They work on the technology and application roadmaps. Yeah, I just listed IPSRI here, which is dedicated to integrated photonics, but heterogeneous integration roadmap is really truly semiconductor electronics roadmap, a successor of the ITSRI. So integrated photonics has its space there. Important it is to also realize that integrated photonics is truly a part of a semiconductor electronics. Yeah, and it is a part of existing norm standards and recommendations. Yeah, the automotive norms will have influence on integrated photonics. There are well-defined standards for telecommunication applications. Of course, the integrated photonics is taken out from them. And from the applications perspective, like quantum, there is still many solutions out of which it's not so clear which will be the winner, which will be the adequate. As we could pick from Ivan speaking just before me, it's not clear when the quantum advantage may actually occur, and how dreadful this may be, and how helpful it may be at the same time to our daily basis life. And I think with that, I should be converging to the end of my discussion. If there are any questions or.
Thank you, Sylwester. I think your presentation was very clear. The findings. I think we have a good overview of, why it's relevant, why we need to act to standardize this industry, the challenges that are ahead, and maybe so far we did not get any questions from the audience. But if I may ask myself, you mentioned low-hanging fruit. So what are the things that we can do? Because you say, okay, the industry will benefit from if we standardize more. Of course, some of the applications are more advanced and already have some standards in place. The others are really not there yet. But what are the things we can do as an industry, and who do we need to involve in order to make already some progress on that?
So we should put some effort to start existing in this standardization bodies. Start with the working groups. So my personal experience. I am a voting member of IEEE Standard Association now. I'm a member of Photonics Committee. But this all was seeded by the IPSRI activity of mine and the working group on the electronic photonic test. So IEEE SA formed a study group first to identify subjects which potentially could end up with the standards. And effectively today I'm chairing a project towards a standard for integrated photonics. The project takes about 2 to 4 years. It may end up as the application note recommendation or a standard. But this is all important because what I should conclude my last theme, existence of these initiatives increases the awareness and increases the trust to a technology. We're starting to be visible, and in applications in which the integrated photonics is not the apparent choice, maybe agriculture, as mentioned by Ivan. Why would people in agriculture care? They want a functional system that helps them to harvest more efficiently, maybe.
Absolutely.
Right, to increase the yield of the harvest. And then we have to make sure that this is useful and friendly technology to them, that they're not scared that out of the sudden there is a mysterious PIC inside.
Yes. Exactly. Well, thank you very much, Sylwester, for your input here. And let us move on to the next speaker of today.
Thank you.
All right, so our next speaker of today is no one less than Michael Lebby, CEO of Lightwave Logic. And I would like to give a special welcome to Michael because it's particularly early for Michael this morning. He's calling in all the way from the Bay Area on the west coast of the United States of America. Michael, a warm welcome and thank you for contributing, and also, of course, thank you for your contribution at the PIC Summit. You were chairing one of the sessions. I think is a very, very important topic. We said earlier also in the introduction of this Delta Dialogues that in heterogeneous integration, or integrating the different platforms together, the different photonic platforms, but also photonic with electronic, is something that's really going to be essential for the industry to move forward and to start generating volumes and to unlock certain functionalities. So I'm very curious to hear more about what was discussed in your panel discussion, what was the view of the various panelists, and what are the key takeaways for the audience today.
Great, no, I'm very happy to be here. I also understand, and it's quite early, it's like 3 a.m. here, but let's see. So, exciting conference. I agree with what everybody has said so far. There are people from all over the world. It was extremely busy. There was excellent networking. But the session I'm going to talk about now in the next few minutes was the heterogeneous integration session. There was a lot of interest in this subject, and I think you've already seen this in your previous episodes. The panel that I was chairing had companies from all over Europe. So let me just list some of those companies. There was IMEC there was Linux, there was VTT, there was Legentech, Smart Photonics, Fraunhofer HHI. And so there was an excellent cross-section of companies that had their own perspectives on heterogeneous integration. Now that leads me into some of the findings we saw in the panel. The first question I posed the audience, and as well as the panel members, is what does hybrid integration, what does heterogeneous integration mean? These terms seem to be synonymous with each other. And I think the conclusion there is that if you're from the silicon world, hybrid and heterogeneous actually means things within the silicon domain. But if you're from the photonics world, it means mixing and matching different materials. And so one of the important things when we start talking about these types of terms is really understanding what they mean from a photonics perspective, but also from a silicon electronics perspective, because that's the history of a lot of the foundries and the volume scale and a lot of electronic ICs. So once we worked through that and understood the difference, what was really the big conclusion of the heterogeneous integration? Well, I think I said at the summary part of the conference, it's real, it's happening. I only said 4 words. But what does that really mean? If we unpack that for a second, it means the heterogeneous integration, the mixing and matching different photonic materials to improve the overall performance of a PIC is real. And it is happening. It's not something that we're just talking about on blackboards or whiteboards or academia. It's actually industry is taking it very, very seriously. And industry now realizes in order to improve the performance of a PIC, and we've seen PICs in indium phosphide, we've seen PICs in gallium arsenide, we've seen silicon photonics, PICs in silicon-based technologies, as well as dielectric technologies. To improve the performance, to access some of the demands of the markets, and let's just talk fiber optic communications, because that's the big driver right now for PICs. Yes, I agree, there's other market applications, market verticals that look really attractive. The performance there needs to improve over and above just pure silicon, over and above pure indium phosphide. So that's mixing and matching different types of technologies. And some of the common ones are, and we already know, silicon germanium, but there's indium phosphide, there's silicon, there's dielectrics in silicon, there's dielectrics in indium phosphide, there's polymers and silicon photonics, there's new ones such as plasmonics, titanate. There's even thin film lithium niobate that's now being integrated with silicon platforms. So if you think about this for a second, these are lots of different materials. Now, the panel was asked, what's the main difference between heterogeneous integration from a silicon perspective and from a photonics perspective? Well, if we think about it from a silicon perspective, if you look at CMOS fabs and CMOS foundries, big silicon foundries, the essence of those foundries is not so much in the materials. It's more in the design. And so we have lots of different design software to, if you like, innovate in the CMOS platform. But the materials of the CMOS platform generally remain the same, the silicon. Sometimes we include silicon germanium, but essentially it's silicon. If you think about photonics, it's not so much on the design. Yes, design is important, but to really ascertain the performance of next generation PICs, we're going to need different materials. And so the whole approach, if you think about the heterogeneous integration for PICs, is actually how do we deal with different materials? And how do we put them together in a foundry that is typically designed not to do that? It's only used to design, it's designed to actually just deal with silicon and different IC designs or different transistor layouts. And so there's a challenge. And that challenge was discussed in the panel, and it actually leads to an interesting thought. Is there a need for a hybrid foundry that can support heterogeneous integration for photonics? Well, you asked that question, and yes, we got a lot of different answers depending on who on the panel was coming from, whether they're coming from a silicon background or photonics background. And I think there is a case for a foundry that is more hybrid-like, that actually allows flexibility to deal with different photonic materials compared to a traditional silicon foundry. Now, in a traditional silicon foundry, what we discussed on the panel is the bigger the foundry, the more inflexible it is with the PDKs and the recipes to accept new materials and new technologies. The smaller the silicon foundry, the more ready, the more flexible the foundry is to accept new materials for photonic technologies. And so what could be a heterogeneous hybrid foundry? Well, certainly some, if you like, wafer manufacturing facility that allows new photonic materials that can be heterogeneously integrated. I don't believe we have one of those on the planet right now, so that could be a really interesting opportunity, especially if we think about how to position European photonics vis-a-vis the rest of the world. Some of the other issues that came up, cost. When you work with foundries, they're not cheap. And so for small companies on the panel, this is an issue. How do you raise the money to work with foundries so you can produce things that are heterogeneously integrated using standard PDKs in a way that you can position yourself for volume? It's expensive. And foundries don't come cheap, and so that was discussed. Another thing that was discussed was, we have silicon electronics in IC chips, and we have photonic integrated chips. And so today, if you look into some of the vehicles in data communications and telecommunications, which are transceiver modules, and you break them apart, you find two chips. You have a silicon chip, and you have a photonic integrated circuit chip. And so the question was, is there ever going to be one chip that does both photonics and electronics on the same chip? And while that has been a challenge for the industry, and some people have actually looked towards doing single chip manufacturing, the practical side of it is probably still makes a lot of sense to keep the electronics separate from the photonics, although there is a wish to try and integrate both if the opportunity comes. And so that is something that the PIC community is certainly looking into, especially with platforms such as silicon photonics. New applications. Today, I put the market applications in two major buckets. One is fiber-based, of which we can see data communications and telecommunications, and then optical wireless. That's where fiber is not used, but those are opportunities where PICs can have a role in, for example, wireless sensing, biosensing, just different types of optical sensing, 3D sensing, structured light. What comes under that is LiDAR and automotive, projection displays, because that is optical wireless. These are opportunities that could really drive the PIC platform. And the interesting thing here is because there were a couple of foundries on the panel, we have to think about how foundries work. Foundries just run wafers through their manufacturing plant, and the more wafers they run, the happier they are. And so 10, 15 years ago, if you'd asked me that same question, there were very few foundries interested in photonics. Well, that's actually changed now, because foundries now see photonics and photonic integrated circuits in general as a route to run more wafers. And that's really exciting for foundries. And so given that background, foundries are now interested in different types of photonic market verticals that could really enable high volume wafer throughput into their plants. And I think as a conclusion from the panel, that is a really exciting note to end on. And so I'll finish with the beginning. Heterogeneous integration, it's real, it's happening, and we're in some exciting times.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much for your contribution. I think you covered some very exciting developments and insights that arise from your panel discussion, from a hybrid PIC foundry to the upcoming interest from foundries to actually generate more business. So I think there are no questions from the audience right now. I would like to thank you very much for your very early morning contribution to the Delta Dialogues, and also to your contribution to the entire PIC community as a whole. I think that's something that stands out. Thank you, Michael, and then we'll continue to the last speaker of today. And our last speaker of today is John Bell. John Bell is the CEO of High-Tech Excel, and he was the chair of the panel discussion about tech transfer and investments. So as he is coming from a venture builder, a deep tech venture builder that's also actively engaged with this technology, I think he is a very right person, to lead such a discussion, because that's in the end what we're also trying to do with PhotonDelta. We're trying to generate more startups that can make use of this novel technology in order to invent new applications, address new markets, so that we can in the end generate more volumes that are going to benefit the entire supply chain that we're trying to boost here. John, can you hear me?
Absolutely, Jorn. Can you hear me as well?
Yes, we can hear and see you clearly. Thank you.
Great. So I had the privilege, maybe that's the right word, to lead the panel around investment. At the same time, I think we had a really interesting composition of the panel, because it was not just investment, also tech transfer. And at the last moment, we were even more lucky to get someone from the US also joining the panel, because he happened to be visiting the PIC Summit, and he brings, I would say, a really interesting perspective. So let me step back 1 second and say who was in the panel. So I'm sure you may have seen it in the program, but let me elaborate a little bit on the kind of people. So we had Tom van Houten. He is the managing director of IMEC Expand, which is an investment fund which just raised the second round of about 250 million. So they invest typically in everything which has to do with ICs, silicon, but also photonics. Great, I would say, personality, a very strong visionary person, willing to be also critical about the roles of VCs in general, and about himself, and about what kind of role investors will play. So, and that's funny to have such a guy in the panel, because you don't want just obligatory, okay, we will do, and everything is rosy. No, that sparked, I would say, the dialogue. Then we had Marcella Gagliardo. She is at the Technical University in Eindhoven, responsible for tech transfer around photonics. So everything which is photonics across the whole university is touching her fingers. Once we start talking about, hey, what should we do with it? Can we bring it to a company? Can we bring it to a license agreement? Can we bring it to a startup, a spin out, spin off, whatever you want to call, all those dimensions she's touching those kind of projects will come to her hands. And then we had Ton van het Noordeinde. He is in the PhotonDelta organization. He's responsible for the investments, a fund of about 15 million, where they invest typically in the very early stage, extremely complicated stuff where people hope something will come out in 10, 15 years, maybe yes or no. And then we had Farhad Vazego. He is from the US in Mastech, it's called. He's a Massachusetts organization, the state organization where they work together around technologies, universities, research institutes, and try to make one policy and develop ideas, develop technology, but also are very much looking to the transfer of these ideas into reality, the society in practical applications, as well as also looking for financing, investing. So those 4 characters I had in my panel. So we didn't need a public or an audience to have fun. But we had fun and with the audience. So I think at the end we had to be pushed out of the room to make sure we went to the plenary session. What we did is, so I tried to do it a little bit different. I was trying to ask them, what is so cool about what you're doing? And by the way, what is your challenge? Because you can ask the normal questions about how to invest, blah, blah, blah. We all realize that is happening. But I was trying to go into the human beings, the personalities themselves, and saying, what makes it so cool in what you're doing? And the kind of answers that came forward somehow were related to the integrated photonics field. Looking at Marcella, she's so triggered by the opportunities to help individuals, researchers, which know anything or maybe everything about a very small area of technology, and just miss the total picture about what can I do with it, and application minds, and that's for her so cool to help these people, to see them grow, to see them understanding, hey, there's much more beyond the technology in itself, and start to understand the whole ecosystem of applications and what you need to do to get there. And also she said, hey, I can motivate or stimulate, maybe it's a better word, or inspire people to consider becoming an entrepreneur instead of only being a researcher. If you then look at Tom, and I will not go to everyone, so I will not do a summary in 5-6 minutes. You should have been there if you want to see all. But Tom was talking about, hey, the fact that he has been an entrepreneur himself, he knows what large companies are, he knows what investments is, and he is able, with a small amount of money, to trigger progress on extremely complicated I would say propositions in the quantum area, and was also saying, yeah, and with this small amount of money, we can hands-on help these kind of startups, and we try to prevent in the very early stage that they being sucked into a large pool of quantum people that move to another continent. And I'm not against people moving to other continents, not at all. I think that's very important. But also what we're trying to achieve in the European environment is to build skills, to build competences, to further develop our own position around the quantum area, the photonics area, the integrated photonics area. That makes us important, not just now, but also for the next decades to come in this space. Then I was asking about the challenges, and one of the biggest challenges is that because the technology development goes really fast, but it's also extremely complicated. As Michael mentioned, and by the way, Michael, chapeau, I would not have stepped out of my bed at 3 a.m. in the morning to do this kind of sessions, and but you did, so that shows your passion. Extremely appreciated. But what Michael is saying, hey, there's all kind of technical developments and a lot of things needs to be done. I think what we all came to the conclusion in our discussion is that applications, those are the ones that we need to figure out. So once we find the right applications, then the technology development will go hand in hand with the market opportunity, with an application area, with other people who can sit at the table to help co-create the novel technologies. And it puts challenges on the technology people to speed up and to combine and to be smart and to go much faster, despite the fact that I would say foundries might be a challenge because they have a huge throughput time, and that's a complicating factor. So that was raised as well. We wish we had 10 more foundries, at least some foundries which could move much faster instead of a cycle of, okay, everything is arranged for this year, and by the way, also next year. So if you want to come with something new, you have to wait some time. So that's the other challenge. What they mostly realize is that there are applications needed, many more. And one of the best ways to do that was starting new companies, becoming entrepreneurial, maybe create a few, I would say, speedboats to build startups, and they're going to figure out will it work, yes, no, and they can pivot and move quickly if it goes into the wrong way. That kind of challenge and find the right people next to the, and I will stop with the challenges, next to the technical brains and the technical geniuses, we need people who are understanding the market opportunities in the business. And that came forward as one of the challenges, how to find those people who understand enough about the photonic space that they understand as well, okay, what could be done. At the same time, by bringing their expertise of the application of the market, it's this interaction where investors would like to play an important role to do that. Maybe two things more, maybe three things. One thing is we also talked about impact on societal challenges. You said, hey, when you do your investments, when you do your tech transfer, when you do everything what you say every day, how important is having societal impact? They all said the right things. Yes, it's important. At the same time, they were also a little bit realistic, and they say, yeah, we have this ambition. At the same time, we also have this obligation to our investors to bring back some money. Yeah? So if we only focus on societal impact over time, we might get into trouble, because we need to bring back some money to the investors and also be able to put that money back in. So impact, yes, but also realistic. What are the quicker wins that could also realize an automatic system of repaying and getting money in? The last thing that was discussed and that we also brought back to the general, so the plenary session, is the importance of what was the most important thing that you're looking at in your investments. And there's a lot of positive spirit in the investment community say about the integrated photonic world. It's talent. So we need to find more talent. We need to create, we need to stimulate, we need to inspire, we need to open the door, we need to train, we need to coach talent. That came forward. Investors are positive. Yes, it's not the easy field to invest in, but they believe that there are plenty of opportunities. So as long as we can find the right talent.
Understood. Thank you very much, John, for the insights from your panel discussion. I think it's as you said, talent is key. Find the right people. How we can also another thing was how we can make a platform, how we can make a fertile ground for these innovative startups to thrive. In the end, because that is we see a more and more interest also from the investment community in this technology, and I think that's looking very promising. But as you say, if we don't have the right people, then that can become a bottleneck. I would like to conclude the session. We are almost at the end of our episode. So thank you, John, and thank you also all the other speakers for your time. If you would like to contribute as a speaker, or if you have any ideas on how we can make this session better, please feel free to leave your feedback through the form that you can see here. So this is the QR code that you can also access through the website PhotonDelta.com. You can also scan it. You can leave your suggestions for contribution of the next episodes. If you have any feedback in general, you can do that through this QR code over here. And then there leaves me nothing else to say I'm very looking forward to see you next episode. That will be at the Photonics West conference in San Francisco, live with some of the people that we're having there. We will be looking forward to the next year. So I would thank all of the speakers, all of the people that watched in today, wishing you already a very nice festive seasons with your friends and family, and already a very good, happy new year. See you next time at Delta Dialogues. Thank you very much.